The soft crackle of a campfire broke the night's silence. Smoke spiraled upward, disappearing into a sky littered with stars. The world felt still, but I couldn't relax. I sat cross-legged on the dirt, my sword balanced across my knees. Its blade caught the firelight, the intricate engravings shimmering like a painting come to life. These weren't the marks of a blacksmith. They were something more deliberate, precise. The patterns whispered of artistry, not war. I traced a finger along the hilt, my mind drifting. My name is Leonardo. History will remember me as a painter, an inventor, a thinker. But that is only half the truth. Before the canvases and the sculptures, before the portraits hung in palaces, I was something else. I was a weapon. The embers snapped, pulling me back to the present. The forest stretched around me, dark and endless, hiding dangers in every shadow. My pulse quickened. A lifetime ago, I would have ignored it. I had been a scholar, a dreamer. Back then, fear came from failure, from the judgment of kings and scholars. Now, it came from the weight of steel and the ghosts that followed me. I thought of my machines, not the gentle, ingenious ones that captured the imagination of monarchs, but the others. The ones meant to break men. The ones that turned fields into graveyards and castles into rubble. Those machines changed everything. They pulled me into a world where genius and bloodshed intertwined. And now, no matter how far I ran, the memory of their destruction chased me. Ambition had always been my driving force. I sketched wonders in the solitude of my workshop, machines that could soar through the air, engines capable of moving mountains, and weapons designed to strike with unerring precision. They were creations born from curiosity, challenges posed to my intellect. But the world around me had other plans for them. It was a spring morning when the Duke summoned me to his court. The air smelled of blooming flowers, yet the weight of the summons crushed any joy the season might have offered. I arrived in the grand hall, its walls adorned with tapestries of past conquests. The Duke stood at the center, his expression a mix of pride and menace. Beside him, a general waited, clad in armor that glinted like the blade of a dagger. "Leonardo," the Duke said, his voice warm but edged with command. "You are a genius. Your designs can change the future." He led me to the courtyard, where soldiers trained under a harsh sun. In the center stood a machine I had only recently sketched, a towering trebuchet, its arms taut with potential energy. The general gave a signal, and the soldiers loaded a massive stone onto the platform. The mechanism groaned as the arms swung forward, hurling its payload with violent force. The rock crashed into a wall of wooden dummies, splinters exploding like shrapnel. The Duke clapped, his laughter echoing against the stone walls. "Magnificent! This is the power of intellect and steel combined. And it is only the beginning." My chest tightened as I watched the destruction. The machine worked perfectly, too perfectly. They wanted more, larger engines, deadlier machines. My sketches became blueprints, and my blueprints became tools of war. With each new creation, I felt a piece of my soul splinter, much like the dummies beneath the trebuchet's might. At first, I consoled myself with a small rebellion. I introduced flaws into the designs, a weak joint, an unstable lever, a gear that might slip. I thought it would be enough to limit the devastation, to turn the tide of war in quieter ways. But the Duke's engineers were clever. They found my flaws, corrected them, and improved upon my ideas. My machines no longer belonged to me. They had taken on lives of their own, wielded by men who saw only victory and not the cost. I realized then that my ambition had become my enemy, and my genius was no longer a gift, it was a curse. The realization came too late. My designs had already been perfected and replicated, spread across kingdoms like an unstoppable tide. The machines of my imagination, those meant to inspire wonder, now inspired fear. I saw the devastation firsthand. Villages flattened, forests burned, and rivers choked with debris. My creations did not discriminate. They destroyed without thought or mercy. I knew I couldn't undo the damage. But I could stop it from spreading further. One night, under the cover of darkness, I made my way to the armory where the blueprints were stored. The guards, accustomed to the false security of the Duke's rule, barely stirred as I slipped past them. My hands trembled as I lit the lantern, its flame casting shadows that danced across the walls. Each blueprint I found, I fed to the fire. The parchment crackled and curled, the ink vanishing into ash. The destruction was cathartic but fleeting. I knew the designs lived on in my mind, etched deeper than any ink. When the guards finally discovered me, swords drawn and shouts echoing through the halls, I didn't run. They dragged me before the Duke, his face a mask of rage. "You dare betray me?" he hissed, his voice low but sharp. The general beside him tightened his grip on his blade, ready to act on command. I met the Duke's gaze, my voice steady despite the pounding of my heart. "I gave you knowledge, and you turned it into death. This cannot continue." The Duke's laugh was cold. "You think you can stop what you've started? Kill him," he ordered. The first guard moved swiftly, his blade aimed at my chest. But I had spent years studying anatomy, understanding the mechanics of movement and force. My hand found the hilt of a sword, one of my own designs, and I moved with precision. Steel met steel, the clash ringing out like a bell. My counter-strike was quick and decisive. The guard fell. The others hesitated, their confidence shaken. I stood ready, my mind calculating angles and weaknesses. In that moment, I was no longer just a thinker. I was a warrior. The forest swallowed me whole as I fled the palace, my heart pounding in rhythm with my hurried steps. The Duke's men would not let this go unanswered. They would hunt me, and I knew their methods well. After all, I had designed many of them. Days turned into weeks as I moved from shadow to shadow, dismantling every machine I could find. I became a ghost, leaving destruction in my wake. Each machine I sabotaged brought a bitter satisfaction, a fleeting relief from the weight of my guilt. But the cost was high. My body weakened, and my mind grew sharper, too sharp, perhaps, as paranoia crept in. In one of my travels, I stumbled upon a small village, its streets lined with the broken remains of my inventions. The people there eyed me warily, their faces gaunt with exhaustion and despair. Among them was a child clutching a crude toy made from the scraps of a machine I had built. The sight froze me. My hands clenched into fists as I realized the reach of my mistakes. A man approached me, his eyes hard but his voice steady. "We know who you are. And we know what you've done." I couldn't speak. What words could undo what they had suffered? "If you've come to help," he said, gesturing to the remnants of the machine, "start here." Without a word, I knelt beside the wreckage, my hands moving instinctively. I worked through the night, stripping gears and pulleys, ensuring nothing could be salvaged for harm. As dawn broke, the villagers watched in silence as I burned the last remnants of the machine. The flames crackled, their light reflected in the eyes of those who had lost everything. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't enough. But it was a beginning. From that day, I swore to fight not just the machines, but the very men who sought to wield them. The forests and ruins became my battlegrounds. My sketches evolved into strategies, my inventions into tools of resistance. Each encounter with the Duke's men sharpened my skills, turning me into something I had never imagined. I was no longer an artist or an inventor. I was a warrior. The forest paths twisted like veins, leading me deeper into the heart of resistance. Word of my rebellion spread, whispers carried by merchants and travelers. Villages once destroyed by my creations now became sanctuaries, harboring the man who had brought them ruin. The people were cautious, their eyes wary, but desperation softened their mistrust. They needed hope, and I needed redemption. In a cavern hidden behind a waterfall, I found a gathering of survivors, men and women who had lost everything to the Duke's ambitions. They spoke in low tones, their voices heavy with defeat. Among them was a blacksmith with arms like tree trunks and a young woman whose knowledge of herbs could heal wounds or create poisons. They stared as I entered, my tattered cloak dripping water onto the stone floor. "You're him," the blacksmith said, his voice filled with an uneasy mix of accusation and awe. "The one who made the machines." I nodded. There was no point in denying it. You've got a lot to answer for, the woman said, her hands tightening around a pouch of dried leaves. Her eyes burned with a mixture of anger and hope. I know, I said. That's why I'm here. They didn't trust me, not at first. Why should they? But trust could be built with action. I shared the knowledge I had once given to the Duke, showing them how to dismantle the machines that haunted their lands. Together, we forged weapons and traps from the wreckage, crude tools that could cripple even the most advanced war engines. As the weeks passed, we became an army of the broken. Farmers learned to wield swords. Blacksmiths crafted armor from scavenged steel. I taught them to fight not with brute force but with precision, using the same principles that had guided my inventions. The woman with the herbs created salves that could close wounds and potions that could silence guards. Our first strike came at dawn. The Duke's men had stationed a convoy of siege engines in a clearing, their soldiers drunk from the spoils of conquest. We moved like shadows, disabling the machines with well-placed charges and cutting through the guards with ruthless efficiency. When the sun rose, all that remained was smoke and ash. The victories came slowly, each one a step closer to the heart of the Duke's empire. But with every success, the weight on my shoulders grew heavier. I had started this war with the hope of redemption, but the faces of the fallen reminded me that some sins could not be erased. Still, I pressed on. The Duke had to be stopped, no matter the cost. The final confrontation loomed like a storm on the horizon, inevitable and merciless. I knew I might not survive it. But if I could destroy the machines and the man who wielded them, then perhaps history would remember me not as a weapon, but as a man who fought to undo his mistakes. The Duke's fortress loomed ahead, its walls high and impenetrable. It was the heart of his power, a stronghold built with the very machines I had once created. Every stone, every mechanism was a testament to my genius, and my failure. Inside those walls, the Duke commanded his army, a force unmatched in size and brutality. To reach him would take more than strength or strategy. It would take desperation. We approached under cover of darkness, our ragged band of rebels hidden among the trees. The air was thick with the smell of iron and smoke, the sounds of machinery grinding into the night. The Duke's men patrolled the walls, their silhouettes moving against the glow of torches. My heart pounded as I studied the defenses. It was as if I were looking at a younger version of myself, the walls and engines echoing the mind that had designed them. This is madness, the blacksmith muttered, his voice low but firm. He gripped his hammer tightly, his knuckles white. We can't fight this. We're not here to fight, I said, my voice calm despite the tension in my chest. We're here to end it. I laid out the plan in quick, clipped sentences. Sabotage the gate. Disable the engines. Create chaos. The blacksmith nodded grimly, and the others followed suit. They trusted me, not because I deserved it, but because they had no other choice. We moved like shadows, slipping past guards and scaling the outer walls. My hands were steady, my mind sharp. Years of sketching and designing had honed my precision. Every step was calculated, every movement deliberate. I found the first mechanism, a massive chain controlling the drawbridge. My fingers traced the gears, finding the weak points I had built into the design long ago. With a swift motion, I jammed the mechanism, the chain groaning under the pressure. The signal came moments later, a muffled explosion near the southern wall. The diversion worked. The guards scrambled toward the commotion, leaving the main gate vulnerable. The blacksmith swung his hammer with brutal efficiency, shattering the lock. The gate creaked open, and our forces poured in. The fortress erupted into chaos. Fires spread quickly, illuminating the night with an orange glow. Shouts and the clash of steel filled the air. I pushed forward, my mind focused on one goal, reaching the Duke. Every step through the fortress felt like a journey into my own past. The corridors were lined with machines, their gears turning relentlessly. They were beautiful and terrible, a reminder of what I had created. When I reached the central chamber, the Duke was waiting. He stood tall, clad in armor that gleamed like polished silver. His eyes were cold, his expression unreadable. Leonardo, he said, his voice calm despite the chaos around us. You've come to finish what you started. I drew my sword, the weight of it familiar in my hand. No, I said. I've come to end it. The aftermath. The Duke's body lay motionless at my feet, the polished silver of his armor dulled by the blood pooling beneath him. The fortress trembled as flames consumed its walls, the inferno fueled by the very engines I had designed. The echoes of the battle outside faded, replaced by the distant cries of retreating soldiers. I stood in the center of the chamber, my sword still in hand. Around me, the machines, my machines, sat silent, their gears motionless for the first time in years. Their stillness was unnerving, like a sleeping beast waiting to awaken. But I couldn't let that happen. The rebels poured into the chamber moments later, their faces grim and covered in soot. The blacksmith approached, his hammer resting on his shoulder. "It's done," he said. "The Duke's men are scattered." I nodded but didn't speak. My eyes were fixed on the machines, my mind racing. Victory wasn't enough. Not while these monstrosities existed. "We need to destroy them," I said, my voice firm. "All of them." The blacksmith hesitated. "Leonardo, we've won. The people will rebuild." "They'll rebuild," I interrupted. "But not with these. If we leave them standing, someone else will find them. Someone worse." The others exchanged glances, uncertain. But I didn't wait for their agreement. My hands moved instinctively, finding the weak points in the machines I had once considered masterpieces. With each strike of my blade and swing of the blacksmith's hammer, the creations of my mind crumbled into ruins. Hours passed before the chamber was silent again. The machines were gone, reduced to heaps of shattered steel and splintered wood. I stood amidst the wreckage, my body heavy with exhaustion but my spirit lighter than it had been in years. The blacksmith approached, resting a hand on my shoulder. "You've done enough, Leonardo. It's over." I shook my head. "It's not over," I said. "Not until I've erased every trace of them. Not until the world forgets I ever built them." Years passed. The scars of war faded, and the land began to heal. Villages rose from the ashes, their people forging new lives from the ruins of the old. But the name Leonardo da Vinci was spoken only in whispers, a ghost haunting the edges of history. I wandered alone, dismantling the remnants of my past wherever I found them. My sketches became ashes, my blueprints forgotten. I became a shadow, a relic of a world that no longer needed me. But even shadows have weight. In every village I passed through, I saw the resilience of the people. They rebuilt not with machines, but with their hands, their hopes stronger than any steel. It was enough to keep me moving forward, even as my body grew weary and my steps slower. One night, as I sat by a campfire much like the one where my story began, I gazed at the stars and wondered what history would remember. Would they speak of the machines, the war, the destruction? Or would they remember the man who tried to undo it all? The fire crackled, and I allowed myself a rare smile. In the end, it didn't matter. The machines were gone, and with them, the burden I had carried for so long. For the first time in years I slept.